Hello, my name is Joseph, and I'm the head of products for the Azure Control Plane and Governance services. Thank you all for taking the time to join the Azure Governance session today. In the next 30 minutes, I want to give you a brief overview of cloud governance and the control plane, and spend some time talking about what's new in this area and what's on our roadmap. Let's start with the purpose of Azure Governance, which is to ensure cloud engineers and their organizations can attain both speed and control in their cloud journey. And with Azure Arc, we can extend this benefit to any environment in the future. We can achieve this goal by helping cloud engineers organize and structure their environment, label and describe their cloud resources with metadata, and to apply guardrails that enforce their standards in an environment where application developers and other users have full self-service access to the cloud capacity. And finally, to index their entire inventory of cloud resources so cloud engineers can have instantaneous insights anytime they want. Adoption for governance capabilities have been phenomenal. As you can see from the adoption statistics, the majority of large enterprises running on Azure today are taking critical dependencies on these capabilities. For example, 82% of top Azure tenants by subscription counts are already using Management Group. 100% of the top 300 Azure customers are taking a critical dependency on policy. And for Resource Graph, it now handles 1 out of every 5 reads for resources. And we're talking about billions of reads a day. So if you are just starting your cloud journey in Azure, or if you're wondering if you should leverage one of the governance capabilities that we have within our portfolio, I hope these numbers can help provide some confidence to you. Now, the key to achieving the governance objective is a component in Azure called Azure Resource Manager, or ARM. ARM, being the Azure control plane, makes it possible to control a cloud environment because it is the front door for all control plane requests to Azure. So this allows it to act as a gatekeeper for you and help you track and index all of your resources and their control plane activities. Now let's look at how each control plane capability builds on one another to provide a comprehensive experience. At the core of this approach is the concept of a consistent resource. Cloud resources in Azure is consistent in the way you create or update them, regardless of the resource type. They're consistent in the way you access their properties and setting. It is consistent in the way you describe or label them through metadata. This is one of the key ingredients to enable you to govern them at scale. The other major factor is the concept of a consistent scope and hierarchies for these resources. I'm talking about resource group, subscriptions, management groups, and tenants. All resources within Azure must exist under one of these scopes. This allows a consistent way in which you can assign control at scale in the form of policy for resource configurations, or in the form of roles for resource access. And it also allows a consistent way to track and index your inventory of resources. Without consistent scope and resources, this would not be possible at all. Now let's look at some of the new capabilities and improvements we have recently released. One of the highest ranked asks from a lot of you is best practices on how to set up your cloud environment. To address this ask, I'm very excited to announce the availability of the enterprise scale landing zones. Landing zones is a reference architecture and implementation, mostly in the form of ARM templates that are conceived and composed by our customer success and engineering team. They do this for some of our largest Azure customers. So it really represents our latest learning and thinking on what we see as proven patterns for the largest enterprises in the world. Our customer success team are also continuing to learn, update, and evolve these structures and patterns. So I hope you can give it a try and deploy some of these reference implementation on your own. Now moving over to the area of management groups. We're introducing some of the new improvements here to help you better manage your root management group in particular. The first one is the ability to set default management group for new subscriptions. Before the availability of this setting, all new subscriptions typically falls into the root management group. Now, this may not be what you want because this really forces you to make sure that all of your baseline policy has to be applied at the root management group. And that's not necessarily where you want to place the majority of new coming subscriptions and the controls for them. So default management group will solve this problem. The second one is the ability to apply permissions for creating new management group on the root management group itself. Both of these settings can be found in the hierarchical settings tab for your root management group in the portal. We hope you'll find these settings helpful in maintaining a cleaner hierarchy. Okay, so now let's dive into policy. First off, we are very excited to announce the preview of policy exemption. This provides the ability to exclude resources from policy. Now, you may think, wait a second, we have exclusion scope in policy assignment like forever. Well, this is an enhancement on top of the existing exclusion scope. Let me explain what's new. When you exempt resources using policy exemption, they are stored as exempt compliance state within the compliance dashboard. So when you look at them like you see in this screenshot right now, you can see that they have a state of exempt. That wasn't available before. You can also set expiration time for automatic expiration, like let's say, an exemption that applies only for 1 year. When that 1 year is up, we will lift that exemption and the policy would get enforced on those resources again, automatically. You can also use policy exemption to provide metadata such as requester, approver, and ticket ID. The exemption feature can be easily integrated with any ticketing system because each exemption is modeled as its own extension resource. So they have their own CRUD operation. That way, you don't have to touch the policy assignment resource every time you want to add an exemption. I want to note that policy exemption is available for free during preview and business model will be announced in the future. Okay, let's move on to data plane policies. We're very excited to announce the general availability of our AKS policies. As you all may already know, AKS policies allows you to govern the configuration settings of your AKS clusters like namespace, pod, and ingress. We're also very excited to announce the preview of our pod security policy. That's what you're seeing in the screenshot right now, which is a set of policies that control security-sensitive aspect of the pod specification. The pod security policy objects defines a set of conditions that a pod must run with in order to be accepted into the system, as well as defaults for the related fields. Lastly, we're also very excited to announce the preview for the support of keys and secrets for our Azure Key Vault policies. Many of you have been using Key Vault policies to govern certificates within Key Vaults already. And with the support of keys and secrets, this really completes the picture. For example, we now have a built-in policy definition for you to enforce key expiration dates. This is now possible. Now, policy lifecycle is another major area of improvement that we have been focusing on in the last couple of semesters. One of the ways in which we help you make the task of authoring a policy easier is the release of our VS Code extension for policy. This makes the task of authoring a policy much simpler by allowing you to examine things like the properties of a resource in its JSON format, and also to immediately look up the resource alias that you need to reference in the policy definition, all inside a single experience. To complete the picture, I'm very excited to announce the what-if testing capability in the VS Code extension for policy. This solves the last hurdle in the policy authoring process, which is the verification of the compliance result of the policy that you're authoring. This step can take a while if you try to verify it in the actual policy runtime. But with what-if testing, you can get compliance results in seconds because we have downloaded the resource payload and allow you to evaluate the policy against it right on your laptop. Now, within the same pillar of policy lifecycle improvements, we have also worked with the GitHub team to make the task of exporting any policy definitions especially built-in definitions to a GitHub repo much easier. Now, within the policy portal experience, you can select any policy definitions to be exported to your GitHub repo. With the policy definition in your GitHub repo, you can also configure GitHub Action to continuously deploy these policies to your Azure environment. So this completes the end-to-end lifecycle of how you can take built-in policies, make it your own in the form of code, store it in GitHub, and have continuous deployment all end-to-end, which is extremely cool. And we want to thank the GitHub team's collaboration on this work. Now let's talk about the modify effect. We released the modify effect towards the end of last year, and we have seen a lot of you leveraging it to ensure there is uniformity in the way your tags are configured across the enterprise, which is really awesome. Now we have extended the policy effect to directly remediate the storage accounts properties of anonymous access and HTTPS traffic. We have worked with the storage teams to bring the public anonymous access setting to governance, which has been a known risk for some time. Once you set this property on the storage account, it overrides the value on the containers level, regardless of what is set there. And then using policy, you can now automatically set this property at scale across all the storage accounts in your environment. This is how you can get the assurance that nothing is exposed in an unintended or accidental fashion within your cloud environment. And to wrap up the policy area, we also have a collection of improvements on helping you exercise best practices when it comes to applying built-in initiatives. Instead of directly applying a built-in initiative, we recommend to customers to make a copy of the built-in policies as a custom initiative. The reason behind this recommendation is that a lot of companies don't want changes that is made in the built-in policies made by Microsoft to be automatically applied to your production environment. And a lot of you also have the need to eventually customize these built-in initiatives anyway. So to make the task of duplicating a built-in initiatives easier, we basically added a button for you in the portal. We're also introducing the concept of policy groups within initiative to help you better organize large initiatives with a lot of policies with additional substructure in there. Now, after you have duplicated the built-in initiatives, you probably still have a need to get informed about updates or changes that Microsoft makes. That's the beauty of built-in policies, because you get those updates, but you just don't want it to be applied automatically. That's why you want to make a duplicate. But you still need to stay informed of the updates. What do? The way we solve this problem for you is to publish our built-in policies into a public GitHub repo. So you can subscribe to the change notification for these built-in initiatives and policy. Now you can stay up to date on the latest changes, but deploy them at your own controlled pace, which is exactly what you want, right? Now let's talk about improvements in Azure Resource Graph area. And the first thing that I want to talk about is support for proxy resources, which is a big one. Proxy resources are typically extensions or supporting capabilities for track resources, like virtual machines, storage accounts, and databases, which are more conventional cloud resources that you're familiar with. So to give you an example, things like alert, security recommendation, health, and maintenance resources, these are all examples of proxy resources. And if you look at kind of like what they do, you can see what I mean. But we have now also exposed these configurations as resources to be queried in Resource Graph, just like track resources. This will give you a much more comprehensive view of your overall environment. Along that same theme, we have also added resource containers such as subscriptions and resource groups to be queried in Resource Graph as well. So we're very happy to address this known gap for you. And the last piece of the puzzle that's left is coverage for management group. And that's coming within a month or two, which is like really, really soon. In addition to proxy resources, there are also important properties for some resource type that are not modeled in ARM and therefore not automatically captured in Resource Graph. One prominent example is the virtual machine's power state. So if you go to Resource Graph today and look at the payload for virtual machine, you actually can't find the power state in there. In order to provide you with a more comprehensive view of your VM resources, we're very excited to announce the support for power state as an extended property for VMs in Resource Graph. This is now immediately available, so if you go to Resource Graph right now and try running the query that I have showing on the screenshot, you can also get power state for VMs yourself. This is one of the highest ranked asks on our Azure feedback page. So we're just very happy to cross that one off our to-do list. Now, if you make Resource Graph queries programmatically and have a lot of subscriptions, we got some great news for you in that camp as well. First of all, we have increased our subscription query limit to 5,000. Secondly, you can use management group and tenant as scope for your query. So you don't have to list out all the subscription that you want to query against in your request. You can use those scope instead. This obviously will make your code much cleaner and simpler and make your life a lot more convenient. Here's a detailed slide of all of the new improvements for Resource Graph, and we have already covered a lot of them. One of the uncovered improvements I want to highlight is the Open Query button that we have added in all of the portal browse view. So for example, the browse view for VMs or browse view for databases. In all of those browse view, you'll find the Open Query button at the top. This will show you the portal team's Resource Graph queries they use to populate their view. So effectively, these are production grade sample queries that you can try on your own. It's really cool, so please take a look. Okay, let's talk about roadmaps going forward. For policy, there are 4 major areas of investments, which is language and expressions, compliance, lifecycle, and definitions. The big thing that we're working on is the new policy language. So as you all know, the policy language today is in JSON format and is not the most readable format for human. We want to create something that emphasizes simplicity and human readability. So if we do our job right in the new policy language, there'll be no more double quotes, all of, double quotes, colon, square bracket, and instead you can just type and, A-N-D, and, like a normal human being in some of your policy conditions. Referencing custom data during policy evaluation is another big work underway. This will allow you to bring in non-resource properties from any source to be used in your policy evaluation. For example, things like project code or cost center ID that is sitting in some of your databases. You can now bring that, you will be able to bring it in when we have this capability available. Remediation in guest configuration policy is another popular ask and something we're actively working on. This is effectively the ability to use Azure Policy to instruct guest configuration to automatically correct configuration when drift is detected within the guest OS environment. Yeah, we know you want it, we're working on it. And finally, we're also working on getting policy compliance data to be queryable in Resource Graph. This will make querying for compliance data much easier and much faster. Not to mention the flexibility of the query language that makes a lot of other scenarios possible. Even our own team are looking forward to using this to enhance the policy portal experience as well. So we're all very excited about this upcoming improvement. Okay, so for the area of Resource Graph, we're very busy adding more proxy resources for you to query. We already talked about management group resources, which is coming really, really soon. But we're also working on bringing VM health state, policy definitions and assignments, and guest configuration resources to you very soon as well. A bit farther out on our schedule is the support of querying cost data and role definitions and assignment. I don't think I need to explain why you would want this. We know you want it, but it's a little bit more complicated in terms of implementation, so it will take a bit longer, but we're working on it. Now, there is also this thing called type space that we're working on. I think this will need a little bit more explanation. So in Resource Graph today, you can query resources that you have created. But let's say you never created a resource like Azure Maps resource before, and you want to understand what the available properties are for that resource type. Or maybe you just want to look at all the resource type that is available in Azure. To answer these questions, type space will provide the data in Resource Graph to help you address those questions. Finally, we're also starting to work on enabling you to use Power BI to visualize data from Resource Graph. This is another top ask in Azure feedback today. General control plane roadmaps. One of the big things that we're working on is control plane private link, which will ensure all the control plane requests and responses between ARM and the client is isolated from the internet and stays on the Microsoft backend. We hope to bring this to you by sometime, maybe in early 2021. This will give you a much more of an isolated and secure private network and includes control plane requests in that picture. Tag and metadata namespace is another major project we're working on, which will allow you to add structure to your tag keys. This will prevent unintended duplication and further enhance uniformity across your entire enterprise when it comes to tags. Not to mention the richer context that you can provide within the keys, and also allows the use of some of the same values or names in the keys. But given that you can have different namespace overall, they can still be unique. In the area of management group, once we have done the work of making sure that they show up in Resource Graph, we can then also provide an improved hierarchical experiences for management group in Portal as well. So that is something that we are very actively looking forward to on delivering. Lastly, we're also looking at releasing a new governance center experience that will bring this growing portfolio of governance capabilities all under one roof. That's all I have for this session. I hope our capabilities, new improvements and releases, and what we're working on in the future will help empower you in your role in the cloud. We want to make you more effective and more powerful in your job. Thank you again for your time to attend these sessions.